Well, hello. This is the fourth Sunday in Lent, I think, and it's time to do our sermon today. Just in case you haven't done it yet, I encourage you to download the bulletin that was attached to the email that went out and follow along. And look, if you can't get that bulletin, you can look on the description underneath the video, and it'll tell you the texts of the day. I encourage you to pause this now and read the text if you haven't done it yet, especially the gospel text from the Gospel of John. It's kind of long. It's pretty much the entire ninth chapter in the Gospel of John. So give yourself some time to read the text, and then when you're ready, you can come back and listen to the sermon. And one other thing to do is if you have the bulletin and you're at home with others, I urge you to give each other parts. Maybe one person can do the leadership part of the bulletin, the other person can do the readings, another person can do the prayers, and please be sure to click the links throughout the bulletin to find music that accompanies it. So here we go. At one point on Friday, one New Yorker died of COVID every hour. That's one neighbor, one friend, one husband, one mom, one sister, one brother, one daughter, one son, one every hour. The devastation of this illness right now is hard for us to comprehend. Doctors in Italy, which has a much higher ratio of intensive care units and beds to people than we do, and was much better prepared actually from a clinical standpoint for epidemic than we are, now must choose. Those doctors must choose who gets treatment and who dies almost right away when people show up to their hospital, simply because they don't have enough equipment for everyone. Here in this city, healthcare workers are beginning to worry because they're running out of personal protective gear, and they know already they don't have enough equipment for everybody who's going to be coming to the hospital. We will also very quickly run out of many other things: jobs, income, livelihood, patience. And the question we have is, are we going to run out of hope? What else will we run out of here in this city? Tonight at 8 p.m., 1 out of every 4 Americans will have been ordered to be staying inside, except to go out to exercise alone, running or jogging or walking, to shop for groceries and medicine, and to go see a doctor. We don't know how long this will go on. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, maybe more. We don't know if we'll distance now, take a break for the summer, and distance again when fall comes and perhaps the virus reemerges. All we know is that we are at the beginning of the outbreak here in New York. The time to stop the outbreak passed, while our leaders delayed and dallied and downplayed. Now all we can do is try to slow the virus down as best we can. Even a person with mild symptoms takes a toll on families. I know, and my family knows, and we know that firsthand. This virus can take 2 weeks to manifest itself in your body, and then 2 weeks of time or more wrecking your body. And that's just a mild case. Right now, we are all self-isolating more or less, but more or less isn't enough. Perhaps your mind is running like mine. What will our city look like in a week when paychecks dry up and cupboards are empty? What will our city look like in 2 weeks when both paychecks and hope are but memories for some people? What will it look like in 4 weeks? I don't know if I can see so far into the future. But luckily, or by God's grace, today's gospel passage helps us believe what we can see and trust in things we cannot see. And we trust things beyond what our eyes, our minds, and our hearts can see, because God is at work among us. We have to believe our eyes. We must. But beyond that, we must trust in God's grace. Now, at first blush, if you read this story, it may seem that it has nothing to do with anything we're undergoing today. And it's a funny story. I hope you were able to laugh at different parts of it. But John tells stories that aren't what they appear to be about, and he does it a lot. And this is one of them. It is meant to be read symbolically. Ostensibly, it's just a simple story about what happens to a blind beggar that Jesus heals on the Sabbath. Now, Jesus heals the man. And the man goes to the Pharisees to be pronounced clean, as is in the law, and they just freak out. Who healed this man? They think he's faking. So they call his parents. Is this your kid who was born blind? Yes, yes. How can he see now? We don't know. Ask him. You, how are you able to see now? I told you, this guy named Jesus healed me. Impossible. I don't know if it's impossible or not. All I know is that I was blind and now I see. And they throw him out and he ends up following Jesus, who says, I came so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind. The Pharisees say, we're not blind, are we? And Jesus says, if you were blind, you would not have sin. But now that you say we see, your sin remains. So it's an ironical story, and it appears to be a story of healing a blind man, but it's really a story about seeing what we believe and refusing to see what we don't believe. It's a story finally about trust. Jesus asks the beggar if he believes in the Son of Man, and the beggar says he does. And Jesus also asks the Pharisees elliptically the same thing, and they do not. The beggar, the blind, the ones who put their faith in Jesus encounter the Messiah. The ones who refuse or reject him don't encounter the Messiah. In John, faith, belief, precede understanding. Or in the symbol that John is using in this passage, sight. Perhaps a better word for it for us might be illumination, the light that brings understanding. Light, as we know in the Gospel of John, and even in this story, light comes first. Now, the U.S. intelligence community was shedding some light on this coronavirus. They've been sounding the alarm about it for a long time. According to the Washington Post, high-level briefings began on January 3rd. But for whatever reason, our leaders, not just our president, but even perhaps our governor and mayor, for whatever reason, they didn't want to see what could happen, or they weren't sure what to do. And it's not just them. Some crazy spring breaker, I guess, in Florida said, if I get COVID, I get COVID. It's not going to stop me from partying. She wasn't thinking about her grandma or other people that she knew that could really suffer. And this virus is doing one good thing, which is revealing our systematic underinvestment in public health, public safety, public hospitals. 40 years of deriding big government, cutting programs, and incentivizing just-in-time supply chains. It's been 40 years of attacks on the professionalism and dedication of American government workers, and that's literally been the story of my life. I was born the year Ronald Reagan became president, and as you know, his famous 9 words, but we're paying for that lifetime of attacks on professionalism. If we want a good government that works, we have to believe that such a government is possible. You have to trust in the expertise of people who are toiling away in anonymity for decades. And I suppose if you'd asked me last year if I thought a global pandemic were possible, I would have said yes, in theory. But I wouldn't have worried about it. I would have just put it somewhere in the back of my mind. I would not have believed if you had told me that a quarter of the country, as of tonight at 8 p.m., could go on lockdown. It would have seemed too sensational to be believed, like a blind man receiving his sight. And I don't think I would have believed anyone who said that to me. And yet here we are. And I believe materially, today is the best day that we will have for a while. So this story in the gospel is a story about sight, about what we humans are able to see and believe. Sometimes we cannot see and can only believe what we once considered impossible. When that happens, sometimes we see and refuse to believe the evidence, which can threaten to contradict everything we thought we understood and knew, so we refuse to believe because it's just too painful. But right now, we do need to believe our eyes. We need to recognize that things are changing right now in ways that we probably don't want to believe. We don't want to believe that our healthcare system is not only unprepared for an epidemic, but woefully inadequate in good times, and that it is going to be under a terrific onslaught. We don't want to believe that we really do need to stay home, and we need to stay home, and to stay away from each other, but we must. We may believe that our leaders have failed us, and that they very well may continue to fail us. But we have to believe these hard things. Only by believing them will we band together in truth to overcome this virus. And we must band together. We have to believe in one another. Now, having said that, and seeing all the things that we don't want to believe but must. I also have to say that believing what we see is not enough. We must also trust what we cannot see. When the disciples pointed out the blind man to Jesus, they asked, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" And Jesus said, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so the works of God might be revealed in him." In other words, trust what you cannot see, things that are beyond your normal way of believing. God's works will be revealed among us now in ways that we can barely imagine. God's works will be revealed in the community of doctors and scientists who will develop treatments and the vaccine. God's works will be revealed in our commitment to love one another by staying home, staying away, and doing what we can to help one another in times of stress and crisis and poverty. God's works will be revealed in all the little ways we find patience and comfort in our confinement with our families. Most importantly, God's works will be revealed to us as we trust God, whom we cannot see, to give us the strength and an illumination of mind and spirit to overcome this virus and all that it brings. We will be pushed in ways that we can't see now. We will be able to do things that we can't imagine that we can do now, but only if we trust that God will lead us into new ways of living and being community, helping and strengthening one another. A strength beyond our strength, a light beyond our darkness, a life beyond our death. We must trust these things, just as we believe in the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. We must trust and believe in the things that we cannot see. And we will continue to do good, because as Paul writes, the fruit of the light is found in all that is good and right and true. So we believe the things that we see. We trust the things that we cannot see. And we continue in all things to do what is good and right and true, as the light of God leads us on. The love of the God whom we cannot see gives light to our world. And it might seem crazy to say this now, but God loves us and is right now as close to us as ever before. Close to us in our doubt and our dismay, close to us in our worry and our fear. God is here with us right now. Jesus promises that as long as he is in the world, he is the light of the world. And now that he is risen from the dead, he is always with us, and that light is never gone. It always shines. Trust in what you cannot see. Believe that Christ is with you. He is here forever.